This is Midwest Moxie, a show about our region's visionary founders and the experiences that shape them. I'm your host, Kathleen Gallagher, Executive Director of Five Lakes Institute. Ben Evans could see that right there in Indianapolis, Eli Lilly and Cook Medical's on-site health centers were lowering their healthcare costs and giving employees better patient experiences. Why, he asked himself, couldn't he help medium-sized companies do the same thing? So in 2008, Ben quit his job and co-founded Our Health to build employer-sponsored primary care clinics. After raising $25 million, Our Health sold part of its business for an undisclosed nine-figure amount to a private equity firm, then acquired Marathon Health and other companies. Ben is now executive chairman of Marathon Health, which has about $600 million of revenue, 4,000 employees, and more than 600 health centers across the country. Ben, welcome to Midwest Moxie.
Hi, Kathleen. Thanks for having me.
Before founding Our Health, you worked in healthcare, real estate, and were on the board of IU Health. How did those experiences help you identify problems you wanted to solve?
Yeah, good question. So I was on the one of the boards of IU Health, not the board. So really learning the provider side of healthcare. And it was the first time in my life I had seen a business that the customer, in this case, the patient, didn't know how much something cost. They didn't know who they should go to. There was no transparency in how they navigated the healthcare system and what in their purchase. And employers at that time were the ones that were paying for that experience. So throughout the 2000s, employers who were paying for that experience started cost shifting back to employees, going to high deductible plans, introducing consumerism, trying to encourage their employees and their families to have more skin in the game with how they engage in their own health. But at the same time, those employers were trying to give their employees and their families more tools to access healthcare. And as you said in the intro, Eli Lilly and Cook here in Indianapolis, Indiana, had done that for a long time, where one of the things they did that was very revolutionary was they actually provided on-site primary care to their employees, which acted as a place to go as a first step in the healthcare journey. And they were able to demonstrate that their employees were not only healthier, but they cost less money against the plan. So that's great. Large, multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporations with tons of scale and thousands and tens of thousands of employees. How do you build something that's scalable to what I call medium to large businesses of Indiana at the time? And that's where the idea of Our Health came from.
I love that you, in your own environment, in your own state, kind of saw a solution. But seeing the solution is just a little part of the journey, right? So
Yeah.
You were newly married, you had a supportive spouse, and you didn't have much debt, but you needed to start raising money because you had a co-founder, Jeff Well, a physician. He had kids and needed a wife, needed the income. How did you raise that first investment?
Yeah, I would say that for myself personally, I was lucky. Both of our parents, I was married, both of our parents gave us the opportunity not to have college debt, which I think is a very rare thing in America and getting rarer. We had no kids and our cost of living was very cheap. And my wife also had a good job. So I didn't really need, income per se. It's like a cost of living phase of my life that I'd love to go back to someday. But my co-founder Jeff, he had just finished residency, three kids. Wife at that point was raising their family. So we did need to go raise some money to not only pay Jeff and ultimately pay myself as a business went on, but build out the kind of the structure around the organization. So we raised $25 million, but we did that over the course of several years. I think the first investor we had invested $300,000 with us so that we could ultimately pay, the first employee or two, which was Jeff and myself.
Was it hard to talk that first investor into it?
So yes and no. One of the things that was important to myself and Jeff was that we found an investor who we felt like didn't have to or maybe shouldn't give us the money. And what I mean by that is it was someone who was smart and understood healthcare, but also we didn't have a pre-existing relationship with. whether it's friends or family or someone that might feel, maybe give us more of the benefit of the doubt than we should. It was a litmus test. Like, how do we test the thesis of the business and convince someone that this is a good idea and a good investment? And our first investor was a guy that we got introduced to through kind of a mutual friend, and who became one of our biggest supporters. And he gave us the money to ultimately be able to allow Jeff and me to focus on this full time.
So you had your first investor. Your initial goal was to help medium-sized businesses in Indianapolis, in Indiana, create these primary care clinics like Eli Lilly and Cook Medical had. How'd you get your first customer? That was at the time pretty revolutionary.
Yeah. So the model itself is we built Marathon Health. We have three channels that we deliver care through: on-site health centers, near-site health centers, and virtual primary care health centers. The initial business started with on-site health centers. So we staffed it with our own physicians, nurse practitioners, and health coaches. We surround that with a suite of wellness and incentive management tools to help arm patients to be better navigators of their own health. The goal is to improve access, help people get healthier and happier, and ultimately save money for themselves, their families, and their employers. Our first customer was we got lucky with, is a publicly traded software company called Interactive Intelligence. Interactive Intelligence builds voice over IP technology. We had an opportunity to present to their head of HR, which led to an opportunity to present to their CFO. And this went through multiple rounds of conversations. And ultimately, we ended up hiring us. The story that we heard later on was the founder of Interactive Intelligence, a gentleman by the name of Don Brown, who's in Indiana and really across the country, but in Indiana is one of those entrepreneurs that like people love. He has started and sold several businesses, and all of them have been huge successes and created an ecosystem of other great founders and entrepreneurs throughout the state. But they went to him, and his name's Don Brown. And they said, "Hey, these guys have never done it. We think they can do it, and we want to hire them." And he said, and they asked basically for his permission. And he said, "You know what? Every single one of my companies had a first customer. I want to be theirs."
Wow.
Which is an opportunity that you don't get very often. And this is a big publicly traded company. It's not, so we're not starting small. And that led to our second customer, third customer, fourth customer, really kind of opened the floodgates for us as a business.
So you start getting all these customers. You're in the vanguard of this new idea that, rather than trying to fix existing healthcare organizations, you're creating a new type of healthcare organization. You're fixing it almost from the outside. And you started building out, then you mentioned you had the on-site clinics on-site at the company. Then you started going to this near-site thing where you'd have a network in the area. Wasn't it hard to get an employee at one company to go somewhere else to this primary care clinic?
That was one of the questions we asked ourselves at the beginning was, if we do this, will patients come, and why will they come? What we found was that if you do a survey of an employee population, they say, "Do you have a primary care doctor?" 70 to 75% of people will say yes. But if you ask the follow-up question of, "Have you been there in the last year? Can you name them?" It falls off pretty rapidly. And generally, we all experience healthcare in the same way. It's a very bad experience. You walk in, it's hard to get an appointment. You walk in, they make you wait for a long time. You fill out the clipboard you filled out 20 times before, with 6-month-old magazines and sneezing, hacking children in the wait room, to get ushered back to an exam room, see your provider for 4 minutes is what the data tells us. And you get a piece of paper at the end if you need a prescription, if you are there for an urgent care need. You will go across town to get your prescription filled. That entire experience is really bad. We changed the way that's delivered. We leverage technology. We space out appointments. Our patients never wait. They can schedule an appointment on their phone. They can text. And we provide the prescription on site right there. So our net promoter scores are in the low 90s. The traditional healthcare system's in the low teens. So there's a big delta between that. What we found was, once you provide a great experience, the patients come back and they tell everybody else. So that first customer 70% of their employees in the first year had a visit with us. So
Wow.
so it was a raging success. And that company was Interactive Intelligence, is a company that was an employer of choice in Indianapolis. They had everything from, a bar in the office to games to sleep rooms. Their benefits were fantastic. Every year when they did their survey of their employees, what's the number one benefit? The health center with us was the number one benefit by a mile.
We've been talking about how you built the company, and from a healthcare perspective, just to get a little personal for a minute, you were well equipped for building a company from scratch, partly because of your experience as a goalkeeper for the soccer team at Wittenberg University, small liberal arts college in Ohio. Tell us what you learned from the experience of being goalkeeper.
Yeah, I think playing team sports is an important aspect of my life, and I think that it's something that a lot of folks learn from. You kind of learn how to win together, lose together, play your role on a team. I played very shortly in college, but I played a lot growing up. As a goalie, you sit in a very unique spot of the field. You can see the whole field. You can see the whole game happening in front of you. You have a point of view and a perspective that nobody else in that field has. And highly functioning soccer teams, their goalie is communicating constantly with the rest of the team, so that the rest of the team understands where they are, what they need to do, and get the information they need to make the decisions and the play they need to make for you to win as a team. Conversely, as a goalie, you also regularly are a part of a losing play. Like you know what it's like when something happens and you watch that ball go in the net, and you're like, man, I was the last line of defense here. That was my responsibility. So you learn how to win and lose together. But the soccer analogy for me is watching that ball go through the net. What you learn is failure is not permanent and failure is not always fatal. As a matter of fact, rarely is it fatal. When you're starting a business, failure is a part of it. There's a million failures along the way, but almost no failure is permanent. So if any, of the next thousands decisions an entrepreneur makes, one of those might be fatal. And if it is fatal, the consequences are huge. Too many entrepreneurs, and I'm a victim of this myself, spend too much time thinking through the minutia of decisions that really aren't that important. And if you make the wrong decision, you can change it tomorrow, and it's an easy change. Versus making decisions, move fast. And I hate quoting people like Mark Zuckerberg, but like move fast and break things like that. That's okay. And that's what I learned from team sports and being a goalie is failure happens, but you can recover from it pretty quickly.
So what you're really saying is that soccer experience and all the sorrow that came from feeling like you lost the game, the real important thing was the team concept. Talk about that a little more, about how that plays out in the workplace.
Yeah, no, great question, Kathleen. So on a soccer team, you've got forwards who are there to score. You've got defenders that are there to defend, and midfielders that play the whole field. And then a goalie who is there to communicate with everybody else to make sure that everyone's in the right spot, and the last line of defense. That's the same thing we deal with on leadership teams across every business in the country, right? Whether it's a 10-person startup or Starbucks, every company has a leadership team that needs to function like a team. Finance has a role, sales has a role, account management has a role, technology has a role, and everybody knows what they need to do, and they're all reliant on one another. And when one piece falls down, it's the responsibility of others to pick it up. And the best functioning teams I've worked with have that philosophy, like the no blame philosophy. We're going to do this together. And the most important thing that I've found is you've got to be, if you're a player coach, which a CEO or a founder has to be, the most important decisions you make are who you bring onto that team. Every person you hire is an assault on culture, and there's nobody who is neutral. Like for every negative person, you got to have 10 people to offset that negative person. So you got to make sure that negative person doesn't show up. And if someone's not working out, they never surprise you in one day like it's working. So like the recruitment of great people is, I think, what made us ultimately successful. It has made us successful is that we've been able to recruit fantastic people to go attack a really, really important mission.
We're talking with Ben Evans, co-founder and executive chairman of Indianapolis-based Marathon Health, which provides advanced primary care at more than 600 employer and union-sponsored health centers across the U.S. We're going to take a quick break and then come back and hear about the big decision Ben had to make about whether to continue growing his company. This is Kathleen Gallagher, host of Midwest Moxie. We're back with Ben Evans, co-founder and executive chairman of Indianapolis-based Marathon Health, one of the largest independent primary care groups in the country, with about 4,000 employees and 600 health centers. By 2018, Ben, our health had raised $25 million and was growing rapidly. You had investors who'd been with you for 10 years. I'm sure at least some were wondering when they would get their money out. That's the point where many founders go looking for an exit. But you decided to look for a way to bring in more capital and keep growing. Why?
So it is an inflection point. I mean, we had proven something. We had done something unique and different. We had raised a lot of money. $25 million is a lot of money. About 10 of that was equity with, high net worth individuals and families. The other 15, Jeff and I had personally guaranteed $15 million from debt. So explaining to my wife what happens if the business goes under and, we have, the bank comes and takes everything and we still owe them $15 million is a fun conversation. But what became very obvious to us, we had done something unique and different, but it wasn't like smart people with capital couldn't come in and copy us and probably do it better. Smart people with capital beat smart people without capital 9 times out of 10. And we had early investors that we felt an obligation to. And we also saw an opportunity where there's a lot of green space ahead of us that was going to need capital to scale. So we went through a process and we got down to 2 of the best private equity firms in the world, General Atlantic and KKR. We ultimately partnered with General Atlantic, and as part of that, our early investors got bought out. Jeff and I stayed in. We kind of rolled forward. That ended up leading to us partnering with a group that wanted to go play offense, and we wanted to play offense too. So part of that strategy was we got to go get scale. Scale in healthcare. You said earlier we're about $600 million of revenue. Sounds like a lot, but healthcare is primary care is $400 billion in the U.S., and that's just 8% of healthcare. So scale matters, and we decided that at that point we were going to go make a couple acquisitions. And since that point, we've done 3 deals. One was the legacy Marathon part of the business, and we've done 2 more since then to get to the point that we have, the scale that we do.
Why'd you take the Marathon name instead of keeping Our Health?
Both tested really well. Our Health had a more localized presence because we had a philosophy of picking a geography and going very deep in it. And that's how we found ourselves, like for example, the state of Indiana. We're the largest independent primary care physician group in the state. Marathon had gone thinner in markets, but had gone wider. But both tested really well. There wasn't a bad choice there. So we ultimately go with Marathon.
Marathon Health provides primary care, which established organizations view as a lower cost service. But they also see it as valuable because primary care physicians can refer to all their higher priced specialists. Weren't you concerned you'd be squeezed out by all the big players in healthcare who didn't want you doing the referrals?
I would say that for the most part, so we work with large self-funded employers, large being, call it more than 300 or 400 employees. They are taking the risk themselves on their health plan, and then they are using whether it's Anthem, United, or a TPA of some sort for the network. So think about us as sitting in front of the network. Nobody in that ecosystem views us as a detractor from what they're also trying to accomplish, which is improved access, better quality of care, healthier outcomes, and lower costs. The health systems in given geographies, occasionally they are threatened by us, but then they learn very quickly that we're also a very good partner. Where we are primary care. We are just primary care. We refer out a lot of patients, and if you are a health system in a market we're in, so if you're a health system in Indianapolis, Indiana, as an example, we're the largest independent primary care physician group in the state. We are viewed by them as an opportunity to be a better partner, to treat our patients well whether they need a specialist visit or an imaging, or you can run the gamut, or potential scary cancer diagnosis. We're a big referrer when it comes to that. But our principal responsibility is to the patient. Our fiduciary is to the patient. So we're there to make sure that not only is the right referral happening, whether it needs to happen or not, but also make sure they're finding the right provider for the right price at the right time.
Yeah, so I would think sometimes you're not referring to the obvious choice because there's another provider who's just as good who costs less, right?
That's right. And think about healthcare is scary, it's complex, really smart people struggle to figure it out. We are that advocate for the patient that helps them figure it out and helps them understand where they should go and why they should go there.
I have to be working at a company to be able to take advantage of what you're doing, right?
That's right. That's right. So we work with large companies. The company itself hires us and pays us directly. So we aren't a fee-for-service healthcare provider. We don't run through the plan. If you see us more, it doesn't cost you more. It costs you the same.
Do I pay for that initial visit when I come to? That's a big difference, right? If I work at a company, I can choose to go wherever I want. But if I go to your center, I don't pay for that visit, right?
That's right. So we are free to the patient, and we are also convenient, and we provide a better experience. So that's why, I referenced earlier, our first customer, 70% of their employees had to visit with us in the first year. That's why. Better experience, lower costs. That generally wins. 9 times out of 10.
Right. You bought Marathon Health in 2020. As we said, that's where the current name came from, and two more companies, and you've continued to grow. Jeff Wells, your co-founder, who you originally raised money to pay, is CEO of Marathon Health, and you're executive chairman and the largest individual shareholder. What's your role at the company today?
Yeah, so to be clear, General Atlantic acquired Marathon, and we did the merger together. So my role at the company is I served as the CEO for the first 10 years. I now serve as the executive chairman. I focus in 3 key areas. First is M&A. So we've done 3 deals since the original deal. Second would be growth and retention. So I help our sales team when they need support, but I also help our account management teams when they need support from executive leadership. I like spending time with customers. So I'm out visiting with customers often. And then the third would be overall strategic direction of the business. Like, where's the puck going in healthcare, and making sure that we're skating that direction.
So you've become one of the biggest independent primary care groups in the country. How much more opportunity is there? Given what you do, you seem very positioned to.
Yeah. I said earlier, like, 600 million sounds like a lot, but it's not. Primary care is a $400 billion industry. And every strategy that involves value-based care in healthcare has primary care. And not only does it have primary care, it's in-person primary care. So through the pandemic, what we saw was a rush of interest in virtual healthcare. But what we found was, once we got there, it pulled forward everybody's readiness to use virtual healthcare 10 years. But it also pulled forward virtual healthcare's extreme limitations in a silo 10 years. So virtual healthcare is really an extension of an in-person experience. And Marathon sits in a place where we are one of the biggest independent in-person primary care groups in the country. And we think that creates a lot of opportunity to be a part of the value-based care continuum as health plans, providers, employers, the government evolve their strategy and how they're, solving this healthcare problem that we have today.
What will it take to solve that healthcare problem?
It's going to take a village. Um, there's no silver bullet here. I think an overinvestment in primary care is one of the things that we can do. Making sure that patient engagement in their own health is pulled forward and pulled forward earlier in the continuum. That would be number one. Number two, I think we have a talent gap issue that can't be solved very easily. Like we've got to increase the funnel of college kids that want to go into healthcare, specifically become a provider. There aren't enough medical schools. There are not enough spots for these kids. There's not enough interest in it. If there's one thing that, kind of public policy needs to really address, like maybe if there's a limitation in quote Obamacare, there's nothing in there that increased the funnel of doctors. We're seeing, sort of seeing physicians retire, nurse practitioners retire, but they're not someone replacing them. As a matter of fact, there's some of these association groups that are limiting the number of residencies to increase price, not decrease price. And the third is like, there's got to be more transparency and readily available information and tools for the patient itself of where they should go, why they should go there, what's it going to cost, who's paying for it, what happens next. Like I said, smart people can't figure it out. I'm in healthcare and I sometimes can't figure it out. I come from a long history in healthcare. Well, I've sat down with family members, my dad, who's in healthcare for 40 years. Sometimes we can't figure it out. If we can't figure it out, that means nobody can.
It sounds like Marathon is going to be a key player in figuring this all out. And it's been great hearing you share your story and hearing what you think you can accomplish.
Well, thank you, Kathleen.
You can read more about today's guest by visiting WUWM.com. Don't forget, you can listen to the show as a podcast if you'd like to take us on the go. Just search for Midwest Moxie wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Kathleen Gallagher. Midwest Moxie was created by executive producer Audrey Nowakowski and me. Today's episode was produced by Audrey Nowakowski and engineered by WUWM's Jason Reevy. Join us next Sunday at 7 p.m. to hear from more visionary Midwestern founders building innovative companies. That's right here on 89.7, Milwaukee's NPR. Support for Midwest Moxie comes from Microsoft, whose efforts to drive technology development across the Midwest and beyond include its National TechSpark community engagement work, which started in Wisconsin, its role as co-founder of Titletown Tech in Green Bay, and its new AI co-innovation lab at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. More information is available at Microsoft.com. And from Quarles & Brady, LLP, a multidisciplinary Am Law 200 firm with approximately 550 attorneys who support large and small businesses, from Fortune 500 companies to startups and entrepreneurs across the country. More at Quarles.com.